back to World Crisis Radio. So if you want to compete with Japan, China, if you want to compete with the Japanese MITI, the Ministry of International Trade and Industry, you better take things like that Craig Venter discovery of artificial life in the laboratory and make that into something beneficial that you can sell. That is the future. If you say no, free market, free market, free market, you're driving the stake further and further into your own entrails. And that is the program of the cokeheads. Let's not call them the Tea Party anymore. Let's call them the cokeheads, because they are funded and run. They are the dupes and the gulls who serve the Koch brothers, K-O-C-H. I say Koch. That would be like Mayor Koch. But no, they want to put on airs, right? It's not good enough to be Koch. They want to be Koch. All right, fine. The Koch brothers are funding all of this. We now find that the Americans for Prosperity, which I think is their PAC, or whatever it's called today, $45 million. That's in the Wall Street Journal this morning, Friday, February 24th. Inside the Republican money machine, a newcomer, Americans for Prosperity, a major role, perhaps the decisive one, targeting 60 Democratic incumbents and spending $35 to $45 million. We're not some Washington, D.C. group, says Americans for Prosperity President Tom Phillips. Bus tours, rallies, TV spots, phone calls, and all this. For what? For the program of the cokeheads. So that's who's running the show. Now, before we get into this, we'll have plenty more about this. Larry Summers is out. This is good. That's a Wall Street Democrat, if there ever was one. He is a tool of Robert Rubin of Citibank, Goldman Sachs, and then Citibank, and this entire clique now. Peter Orszag at the Bureau of the Budget, Christine Romer, president, head of the Council of Economic Advisors. Summers now out. That makes three. 3 down, 1 to go. That would be Geithner. Geithner should also be ousted. And instead we now have Elizabeth Warren. Well, ever interested in program here, let's pose 4 tasks for Elizabeth Warren. She's going to control this Consumer Protection Agency, which is part of Obama's FinReg. All right, fine. This is designed to be toothless, but maybe with an aggressive bureaucratic player, if that's what Elizabeth Warren really is, we're going to find out. Let's not assume anything. Let's give it the big push. Give it the old college try. Elizabeth Warren, here are your marching orders. First, stop foreclosures. Stop all foreclosures on the primary residences of anybody in U.S. jurisdiction. Americans have a right to a home. Stop all foreclosures on primary residences. Now, this can be done through regulations. You want to write the regulations? Take a look at the Fraser-Lemke Act of 1935 that allowed any foreclosure to be delayed for 3 years if you could get any local judge at any level to sign on, that the person in the house was making a good faith effort to pay or couldn't pay or was destitute. We don't need to fill up the Obamavilles and the Hoovervilles with homeless people and internal refugees. The other thing you can do, and this actually came up in the Maryland Democratic primary, at least one candidate was out there talking about compulsory mediation and perhaps even compulsory arbitration to prevent these foreclosures from going forward. And, of course, the Homeowners Loan Corporation, which is then a way to refinance these homes at a much lower valuation with a much lower payment. That would be the longer-term solution. So, Elizabeth Warren, your first task, stop all foreclosures. Any financial institution that has benefited from the bailout, from the Troubled Assets Relief Program, or from Federal Reserve lending, or from FDIC lending, or from any other kind of federal intervention, has a public duty to stop foreclosures on Americans. No more foreclosures. Finish. That's it with foreclosures. That's number one for Elizabeth Warren. Secondly, the question of usury, exorbitant interest rates, right? 25, 35, 45%. It's not enough to say, well, we'll give you a 30-day warning. No. This has got to be controlled. Now, before Paul Adolph Volcker came on the scene, thanks to Jimmy Carter of the Trilateral Commission, we had usury laws, and generally this was 10%. The usury laws in the United States generally said in most states that 10% was the most you could charge. Let's be conservative. Let's be traditionalists. As good traditionalists, let's go back to what worked for many, many decades until the coming of this lunatic crackpot, Paul Adolph Volcker, and his 22% prime rate. Elizabeth Warren is now in a position to at least try to write regulations concerning the interest rates on credit cards. This time, instead of having a state-by-state usury system, which we could also have, some states may want to do better for their people, 10% across the board is the top rate for any kind of interest in the U.S., and if you can't get it for that, you're not going to get it. Either way, it's just not going to happen. Now, some might say, well, it might fluctuate. Yeah, I suppose it might. We could also say, if that's too much for Elizabeth Warren, we could also say, take the federal funds rate, which is currently 0, and add maybe what's reasonable. What's a reasonable rate of return for these characters? 5%? 6%? That's plenty. So you could say 5 or 6% above the federal funds rate is what the top rate should be. That might even be lower than 10% at a time like now. We need federal regulation on interest rates. Your credit cards are exorbitant. They borrow at 0%. They turn around and charge you from 10 to 15 to 20%. This is crazy. They're getting the money from Uncle Sam, and they're lending it to you with a hefty markup. Unbelievable. A third point concerning payday loans. Predatory lending. Some of this stuff is covered in the usury laws, but we want to make a special effort to wipe out payday lending and short-term loans that you get on the title to your car, right? You come in and give them essentially the deed to your car title, and you come out of there with some cash, but pretty soon they're going to take your car away. No more. No more. This has to be banned. Sorry about that. This has got to go. This is predatory. This is destroying society. Once you lose your car, you can't work anymore. You enter a downward spiral. The fourth, adjustable rate mortgages. Elizabeth Warren, we don't care about whether it's written in 10-point or 12-point or 20-point type. We don't care whether it's 2 pages or 5 pages or 10 pages. We don't care whether it's in simple language or in legal Latin, for all we care. It has to end. The adjustable rate mortgage is like selling a time bomb. It's not a financial product. It's a public menace. End adjustable rate mortgages. So, Elizabeth, your tasks. Stop foreclosures. No more adjustable rate mortgages. No more payday loans and title loans. And what was the fourth? Well, we'll remember it in just a minute. Back in a second.